All right. Thank you for that. So some really interesting things you kind of touched on there. I guess starting from the first thing that jumped out was the improv and, where it lends to like conversations and being able to pivot. I think that's a really interesting concept. And, I almost saw it personally from even a music standpoint, being able to improvise in music and just having that sort of almost artistic side of your brain lending very well to technical scenarios and things that should be very analytical. And I find that the people that I've met in the industry, such as yourself, that are, very well spoken, very successful, very, understand kind of what's going on, have that artistic side. And they're not just, I guess, hyper focused on the technology. So, to your comment about like building the relationships and being able to have conversations, was that more around the sales side of things, or are we just talking like overall just being successful in the industry and in the business, having that is crucial?
I think it's everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
relatively speaking, the one thing that I'm learning more and more over the past 20 years is this whole concept of binary is artificial. There are very, very few things that are not hybrid.
Right.
Almost everything ends up being a hybrid. It's just a question of what's the maturity level of whatever that technology or persons or cultures or whatever.
Right.
And one of the challenges is that when we have discussions, and we can call it for the technologist, but I would say in
Mhm.
almost every aspect of life,
Yeah.
if you're a specialist, that means you're going to be very, very good at doing the same thing everybody has been doing over and over and over again.
Hmm.
There's no evolution, there's no adoption, there's no embracing new ideas. So how do you embrace new ideas? You do so from an external perspective,
Hmm.
and you collaborate with those people, kind of improvising a way of looking at something.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that's a skill that a lot of, especially the technicians who I am the expert on this particular widget, this particular form.
Yeah.
I am an expert on server management, server maintenance. Don't ask me how we're going to do a service level type of
Right.
cloud integration,
And I
because
think
that's not
that's
what I do.
it's weird. Like if I had to kind of trace back, the industry really kind of pushed us into these niches. At least somewhat in the MSP, but like if you look at the enterprise level, I remember back at my MSP, we were looking at resumes, and it's like this person on paper looks like they're amazing certification wise, but when we asked them in the interview, it's like, what did you do? It's like, I spent the last 15 years managing Active Directory for a Fortune 100. Well, do you know anything about firewalls? No. Did you ever? It's
Yeah.
like, no, I don't know anything about networking. I just know how to like manage Active Directory. It's like, well, that's no good. That's like 2% of the
But
tickets. It's
But conversely,
yeah,
you also have organizations when you're small, you
hmm
need to have those jack of all trades. You need the person to be able to do
for
everything,
sure. Yeah,
but you can't do everything.
you've got to rein them in, right? There's
Exactly. So you have to have that balance.
hmm
You have to have that balance personally in terms of what do you want to be?
Yep.
You want to be that person who's going to be Active Directory for the next 20, 30 years. Hey, that's great, but that's who you're going to be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus you want to be someone who's going to be more cascading across the board and bring skills through. That's great, but
Yeah.
you're never going to be the person who's going to be the AD expert.
And I think there's so much, when we talk about where the industry kind of went, like I've only been in the industry probably since 2014, I want to say. So
Yeah,
a decade,
me
right?
too. I've only
Yeah.
been because I'm young.
Yeah. Yeah. 33. You look great for 33.
I
Um,
know.
but when we started, we're still running our Exchange servers. We were, Office 365 was kind of picking up here in Canada, but they were still very much pushed back due to, internet and such. But I remember our at the time, we were like, if it plugs in, we look after it. And that, in hindsight, was a horrible mantra. Because then it was like, hey, I found these Zebra printers at auction. Can you get these working for us? And my iPad doesn't work at home. Can you look at this? And then we got into this and we became such a jack of all trades and very much a master of none that at a certain point we had to look at service margins. Like, is this making sense anymore? Like, we've got 14 tickets because like this TrendNet camera they bought 15 years ago keeps going out. Why are we supporting this?
Yep.
And, and then you take it even a step further. Now that I'm like hyper focused into specifically Azure, the deeper and deeper I get into that, the more overwhelming the amount of knowledge and change that is happening. Like, I can't imagine being an expert in this and Office 365
Yeah.
and the dev stuff and the Power BI. And it's just like, it's insane, the frequency. And now AI, right? Everyone wants AI. It's like, well, like I got to pick a lane at some point, but I love at all. Like I love looking into different things. I got side projects and stuff, and that's a burden on me that I have to like. Okay, I either got to hyper focus or be okay with being a surface level jack of all trades. Right? I have to make that decision. So
And it's one of those where you don't have to stick with it.
yeah,
You can also make, from a personal level, you got to get back into the what am I really really good at.
right.
And if you basically say you got to pick a lane, that's
Mhm.
great, but you also have to have an exit ramp for that lane
For sure.
because
Yeah.
sooner or later everything becomes commoditized in IT.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're going to do this one trick pony or one trick concept or anything along those lines, sooner or later, whether it be Azure, whether it be 365, whether it
Yeah.
be the man in the moon, is going to come up with a way to make it so that you don't have to be that
Mhm.
high price or you can't be that high price consultant. So
Yeah.
what is it that next level, that next layer
Hmm.
of goods or services that you're going to be able to do? Similarly, from a managed service, I mean, managed services, we're profitable if we can scale.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. And so if we can't deliver, to your point, when they're coming
Hmm.
back with zebra printers from, the last millennium,
Yeah. Yeah.
because and they're basically you said you could support our stuff.
Hmm.
There has to be a situation where we basically go, I'm here to make a profit, and,
Yeah.
and I can't make a profit by handling everything that you find at every flea market.
And that's so that statement right there, I think is I don't want to say it's like the root, but I've had to have conversations with partners and just at different MSPs, and like I'll say first, like I've never run an MSP, but I've worked for one, and I've gotten to like operational levels within there, and it was always, I've had to tell partners like, you don't be afraid to make a profit, because if you're not growing and being profitable, you're dragging everyone else down with you, right? If you're working 80 hours and you burn yourself out, now all your clients lose you as support, you've helped nobody. I go, so don't be afraid to make a profit. Don't fleece your clients, right? But also don't be afraid to talk about that, because, if your client's like, well, I don't know why you have to charge this rate, you should instinctively say, because that's what it takes to run this business,
Yeah.
right? Like it's what we need to do to survive.
One of the conversations that I have when we first both during the process of selling and during the process of onboarding, and I
Mm-hmm.
try to have this conversation with every client, and I'll do it over and over again, is what I call the value conversation. At the
That's
end
yeah.
of the day, the client has to look at me across the table and go, my value to the company is greater than the amount of money you're charging us.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to look at him across the table or her and basically say, and I'm making a profit out
Yeah.
of the money that we get versus the cost that it takes for us to do it. And if either party can't do that,
Mm-hmm.
that is an untenable situation.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's that simple. And if either one of
mm-hmm.
these parties is either I need to gouge that client for every single dollar I can,
Yeah.
or I need to pinch every single penny so I get as much service, then this is a bad relationship. It's just a question of how much damage is it going to do.
And who's going down first, right? Like,
Right.
yeah,
And
it's
so I want to have that conversation as early as possible
mm-hmm.
because depending upon how they respond, I know whether or not I want to bring them on board as a client.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, if you can refer back to that when they're asking the question about the invoice,
Mm-hmm.
the worst time to learn CPR is when someone's having a heart attack.
Yeah.
But if you could basically go, and they say, yeah, why did you charge me an hour and a half to fix that 20-year-old printer?
Mm-hmm.
And you basically, because remember what we talked about?
Yeah.
I need to make a profit. It takes an hour and a half because you remember I also told you that this stuff is old as spit
Yeah.
and therefore is going to take us more time to support.
Yeah. That
This
printer
is
came out when the sysadmin was in elementary school. Like, there's a
right. Not
yeah.
in my case, it
Yeah.
would be more along the lines of when you were a
Yeah.
CIO at a government municipality.
Right. Right.
But yeah, the elementary school,
Splitting hairs,
it'll probably
splitting
work
hairs.
better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's I think it almost goes down to a psyche when you look at a lot of like this one man, two man shops, people starting their own MSPs. Usually they get into it because there's a root of I like to help, I like to solve, I like to fix, and sometimes to their own detriment. I think like the mantra is MSPs suck at selling. We're really really good at like fixing problems and solving for problems, but we're terrible at selling ourselves and selling services a lot of times. And that's where you hit your operational maturity, you bring in a sales team. But when there's very much an introspection for someone that is maybe IT oriented that starts an MSP, when they see a problem, their instinct is to try to fix it, sometimes well beyond an 8 to 10 hour workday. And they're doing 80 to 100 hours work weeks to start their business. And then it's like, well, could you have dropped 40 hours off? He would have said, look, that thing's too old for me to support. Where like or that's out of scope, and we can find alternatives around this, but I'm not going to bang my head against a 15-year-old router or something like that, to essentially offset your costs into my costs, right? So
I think part of the challenge is not so much that we're bad at selling, because quite honestly, most everybody's bad at
yeah,
selling, or most
yeah, yeah.
everybody's good at selling to a certain degree. I think part of it is it's hard for them to realize, A, they feel like they have to present themselves as miracle workers who can fix
Mm-hmm.
anything, no problem. No job is too
Right.
small,
Yeah.
no job is too big, or anything like that. And at the same time, they're afraid to put limits or
Yeah.
expectations on the part of the client, because then you'll run away and go to the bigger people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's one of those where, at the end of the day, I want to be in the room with the people I can work with.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in the room with people who I can talk
Mm-hmm.
into working with me.
Right.
And to a certain degree, to your point, if you've got a situation that is taking 80 hours and you thought it was going to take 20, come to the table early,
Talk
or
about it.
never, first of all,
Yeah.
never come in and say, it's going to take me 20 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. We
To
estimate.
basically say, hey, look,
Yeah.
this is in this particular case, this is
Mm-hmm.
really older technology. We're going to do the best we can,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to take like 20 hours, and I'll let you know
Yeah.
whether we're making progress, but it's possible we're going nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to some people will push back at you and basically go, no, I need a fixed fee.
Yeah.
And you can basically, well, and that's why you should have relatively modern equipment, so we can do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. There's.
And if they push back, are they a good fit?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then that's where they don't become. They don't see the value. They just
Yeah.
see you as a cost center. They see you as
You're the
yeah.
guy who said you could fix it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And if that happens all of the time, okay, different story.
Mm-hmm.
Then it may be time to consider, okay, what is your approach? And I'll be honest, and this is horrible,
Yeah.
maybe you shouldn't be an MSP.
No, that's a fair, right. That's the other side that is often overlooked, right? Where it's like, I'm great at IT. I'm even great with speaking with people, but sometimes
Yeah,
you're great at speaking with people when things are working, or
yeah,
whether you solved a problem. It's very interesting to see how someone like reacts or addresses a problem, like when a project goes south, or that quick fix burns the environment down, right?
right.
Because like, you just rebooting the server, that's fine. A RAID card dies. Now what? How do you handle
Yep.
that moment, right? So that's the difficult part usually. And a lot of times, like as an MSP grows and you start to hire and you hire, and then you have that operational maturity break point where it's like, I get to hire my first sales rep. I get to hire my account team now. I'm not running everything. Like that's usually where I see a lot of organizations just be like, I can't do it anymore. Like
Yeah.
it's tough, right? So it's really interesting, talking about that, but I really appreciate the insight. That's amazing. Yeah, no. So just follow up question. You planning on shaving again anytime soon, or was that a one and done thing for us?
Well, it's one of those where I shave or excuse me, I grow a
Yeah.
beard because I'm lazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not a fashion statement. This is not a design decor or anything along those lines. I'm just a lazy so-and-so,
Yeah.
and I'll use the trimmer about once a week, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point, depending upon which picture they put up in the post office, I am sure I will shave.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's like, and this stuff, I wait till it gets long enough, and then I just go chop it all off again.
Yeah.
I actually got a call from a fashion consultant who wants to meet with me about helping me choose my wardrobe.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I am meeting with her Monday.
I am
Eh,
excited for the follow. We might have to do a post interview.
Absolutely. And I told her, I
Yeah.
said, I want to be very, very clear. I have absolutely zero interest whatsoever
Yeah.
in buying anything of clothes or all that. And I explained to her,
Yeah.
all of this. I said, but I'm fascinated of the concept and the process.
For sure.
And
That's
I
awesome.
actually wanted to ultimately have her, based on the conversation on my
Hmm.
podcast,
Yeah.
to talk about this entire approach of appearance and all that kind of
Yeah.
fun stuff.
I'm actually interested in like I wonder how often that happens, even particularly in our industry. Like, is it just like you were doing something visually on LinkedIn, so like that's just a lead? Was there like how did she essentially end up in your inbox?
Oh, I because she's reaching out to business people in Northeast
Okay,
Ohio.
there
So
you go.
she's doing her job. She's
Yeah,
marketing.
there you go. She
You
want
know,
she want to
and
do
it's just
MSP
like
sales? Yeah.
all of the LinkedIn invites that we get from people who are going to promise to set all of my leads for me,
Yeah, yeah.
who are going to do all the offshore work, all of that kind of fun stuff. So again, it gets back to that we're going to deliver goods and services.
There you go.
So in this particular case, this is why I find this fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Is in this particular case, her goods and services are going to be, because I can go out and purchase my clothes.
Yeah,
Client can go out and purchase a server. A client can go out and buy a cloud subscription. A client can go out and buy a subscription to any of the services
yeah.
that an MSP does. But what she's going to do, in theory, is she is going to make sure that the goods and services, the software, get it? Uh,
Uh,
sorry, I had to. But that is actually applied to increase the how I'm delivering my goods and services, visual, whatever you want to call it.
yeah, yeah.
I love the parallels when you look at service deliveries.
That's a super
It
fascinating.
Yeah,
We spend so much time kind of in our own industry or in our
yeah.
own verticals, if you will, to see something from the outside that is so paralleled to what we do. Let's see if well, I'll tell you what. When we come back with some nice kicks and looking all spazzed up, like send me a picture and then I'll follow up on this with by the way, this is what he got out of it.
If
Yeah,
that actually happens, I would strongly suggest you find the young lady's name and hire her
there we
because
go.
she is beyond a doubt going to be the best salesperson on the freaking planet because I truly have zero interest in improving my dressing
Well, the good news is,
strat.
so it'll be probably 2 weeks before this hits the airwaves. So we'll have answers by the time this comes live, hopefully, and
All
maybe we
right,
can
sounds
drop a
good.
photo right into the LinkedIn. So excellent. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to reconnect. I know we've got
No, same
our
here.
little
This is fun.
hodgepodge of idiots side chat going on in LinkedIn, which I'm not leaving that. That's a lot of fun. But
Yep,
hopefully I'll see you at some event sometime soon.
sounds good.
All
Take
right.
care.
Cheers.